Okay, wonderful. Excellent. One of my favorite things and sources for video material is reading unintelligent commentary from less than intelligent people on photography forum boards. Let's talk about, as we like to call them, crayon eaters. I like to call them knuckle draggers. But let's talk about the fallacy of computational photography. Some have liked to call this measure baiting. And it's kind of also the same premise as knowing the cost of everything, but the value of nothing. It's also like being penny wise and pound foolish. I got this buddy I've known for decades, tighter than the bark on a tree. Multi-millionaire, mind you. A perfect example. Man, he is so tight. I mean, he will drive an extra 5 miles to save 20 cents on a gallon of gas. Got no wife, no kids. He's up there in years. He's like, who the hell are you going to leave it to? He won't spend a penny, you know? Won't spend a penny. That's what we call penny wise and pound foolish. I think the British came up with that one, right? Let's talk about the computational photography fallacy, or we call it kind of base stupidity, if you will. Let's have a perfect a little analogy here, okay, to drive the point home, and then I'll get to the facts. Let's say I got a small tomato garden in my backyard. You know, it's like about, I don't know, 30 square feet, because that's more than enough tomatoes, as we say in the South. Tomatoes, or the tomatoes, or tomatoes. And it's like saying, well, you know, my tomatoes are just as good as Bob, who's got, and Bob professionally grows tomatoes, right? Bob's got 100 acres of the exact same tomatoes growing. So, well, my tomatoes are the same as his. You know, if we go and look like at a square foot of my tomatoes, you know, they're really 100% identical to Bob, but he's got 100 acres of them. You see, well, the difference between me and Bob is that Bob can sell most of his tomatoes and still have tons left over. He can even have, old Bob, have half of his tomatoes eaten by rabbits and bugs or whatever, and he'll still have tons of tomatoes to do whatever the hell he wants, right? So this is the difference to computational photography. Now, it is the case that, and of course, 47 megapixels on the Nikon D850, for example, full frame sensor, right? It's pretty damn close to 51 megapixels on the GFX cameras, right? And of course, if you blow them up at 400%, they look pretty similar. That, in most cases, they look pretty much the same. And this is what I've found on the photography forum when people, I think it was on Diaper Review, they were talking about the GFX camera. And it was like, there's no real difference between full frame and medium format. Everybody that owns a medium format camera, by the way, but there's a big difference. The problem is, the mistake that they're making is called computational photography. There is a medium format look, okay, and there is a huge difference. Just like there's a difference, even though per unit area, like my tomatoes in my backyard would be the same as Bob's, who's got 100 acres of the same tomatoes. You see, Bob has leeway for damage and shrinkage and rabbits eating them and everything else, and I don't. You know, kind of the same analogy. And the medium format difference, I'm the only person that's ever made a chart that I know of. Talk about the medium format difference. You're actually much closer with a wider field of view from identical differences between camera and subject. For example, the 110 millimeter, which I don't have here, is equal to an 85 millimeter in a full frame sensor camera. Yeah? You got a superior aspect ratio of 4 to 3, for example, compared to FX, which is 3 to 2. Yeah. 4 to 3 is better aspect ratio. You've got more megapixels, or in the case, same megapixels with larger photo sites over a larger area, which, by the way, requires less enlargement to make the same size print. It's kind of like back in the days of film when I shot large format. The neat thing about 8x10 large format is that when you make an 8x10, it's a contact print. There's no enlargement required. You lay the negative on the paper, you shine the light, and then you pull the negative off. There's no enlargement. It's a contact print. Isn't that wonderful? What that does is it leads to no grain at all. That's the same thing. There's a lot of stuff that actually people call noise, okay? Shot noise is one thing, and noise or grain from excessive enlargement's another. Yeah. Larger photo sites, like I said, less enlargement makes same size print. Which is superior, for example, a 50 megapixel on a full frame sensor camera, like D850 is pretty close to 50, right? Or 50 megapixels on a GFX camera. Well, one is sensor area, which requires less enlargement. So the answer is the GFX. Also, too, the photo site and pixel size. I actually saw some moderator on Diaper Review who claims to be a technician on digital photography say, well, larger photo sites don't really make that much of a difference anymore. Well, you should have tell that to Nikon, who on purpose, because their technicians know what the F they're doing, created huge eyeballs on a full-frame sensor camera on the Nikon D5. And that's why that full-frame sensor camera on the relatively modern, I mean, hell, it's only a couple years old, that's the reason why it's a 20 megapixel full-frame sensor. You know, because the flagship Nikon cameras, D5, D4, their primary use, they're used for all sorts of damn things, of course, but what people buy them for is for like crappy lighting photography. A lot of times you can't use a flash, and that's photojournalism, news, and event photography. Like indoor clubs where everybody's rocking and bumping and grinding and, you know, popping stuff that's illegal. You can't do flash photography. Yeah. So what you need is best possible SNR per unit of time, which means large-ass photo sites. So whatever how is it unlimited messages any Mac? There's always crazy crap popping up on a Mac. This is the part that I like about Mac, is you always get crazy crap popping up on your computer. Yeah. I don't need to see any of that stuff. I really don't. Yeah, I don't. Yeah. That's the stuff. Welcome to the world of Macs. Actually, Windows kind of does that too. Damn Mac. But there is a difference, and this is the problem people make with computational. They'll take an image from a D850, for example, and an image from a GFX or Mamiya Leaf or Hasselblad X1D, which has been discontinued. And like, look, we blow them up to 400%, you can hardly see anything. And then everybody says, yeah, what they're doing is trying to rationalize to them. So yeah, and I saw this comment all over the place. Yeah, there's no real difference between medium format and FX anymore. Yeah, says who? Not a single person that has ever looked at a full-blown RAW file or a 300 megabyte TIFF, which is what they average. I mean, you do a full conversion of a lossless 14-bit RAW file from a medium format, GFX, average about 300 megabytes. There's not a single person that hasn't taken a look at one of those images and blown it up to 400, 600, 800%. They go like this, they go, oh my god! Oh my god! You know, it's kind of like an optical orgasm. Everybody that says this stuff and tell other people, yeah, there's no real difference. And that's not like a real medium format. That's like a crop sensor medium format. Shut the hell up! Have you seen the image? You seen the images from a GFX compared to like any 30, like the full blown. Don't blow it up to 800 or 400 to 800%. Look at the, comparing. It's like comparing my backyard tomatoes, per unit area, right? Which is where exposure occurs, but we're not talking about exposure. Comparing my backyard tomatoes, like 1 square foot, to Bob's 100 acres of tomatoes. Yeah? I was like, well, when you look at Bob's 1 square foot of tomatoes, they look the same as my 1 square foot of tomatoes. He's like, yeah, but Bob's got 100 acres of them. Bob could let a herd of bulls run through his 100 acres of tomatoes and then invite the entire town to come in and pick as many tomatoes, and Bob would still have a crap load of tomatoes. You see, this is a problem of computational photography. It's like, well, 47 megapixels of full frame on a Nikon D850, it sounds really close to 51 on that really expensive medium format camera. Yeah, you're comparing numbers only. You're not actually comparing the reality. This is the problem of computational photography, or measure baiting. Yeah? This is when things are not additive, they are multiplicative. What is a perfect example of that? The Roman fascia. A fascia is a bunch of sticks that are bundled, wrapped together, and when they're like that, you can't break them. The strongest person in the world can't break them. Now, you could take one stick, right? Break it. You could take two sticks. You think, well, that's twice as hard to break. No, it's not. It's more than twice as hard. It becomes harder to break, right? You add three sticks together, right? Perfect example. Well, that's just 3 times as hard to break as one. No, it becomes not additively harder. It becomes a multiplicative. Harder to break 3. It's like 4. Well, that's 4 times as hard. That's just 4, you know. 4 should be 4 times as hard to break as 1. It's not. It's not. So that's the reason why it's that old ancient Roman symbolism. It actually has a lot of metaphysical symbolism and political symbolism. You know, united together we stand. What is it? Yeah, united we stand, together. Right? What is the motto on the back of the dollar bill? Yeah, united we stand, divided we fall. You know what I'm talking about. That escapes my brain for some reason. Computational photography does not get to the heart of the matter. There is a je ne sais quoi. There is a quality of medium format, of which anybody that has used medium format and takes a look at an image like on a high resolution, large display, they'll all tell you this, oh my God, this shit don't look nothing like mine. That's a fact. I get sick of seeing the same comments over and over. Yeah, that's not really, it's only like 3 more megapixels. Yeah, it's like it's on a lot larger sensor. Requires less enlargement. But also, 2, you are closer with the same field of view. Because when you have your feet glued to the floor, excuse me, you're standing there with an 85 millimeter on a full frame. To get that same field of view, you are closer because you're using a 105 millimeter in the same spot on a larger sensor. So you got a larger sensor, okay, which does not gather more light. We're not talking about exposure, okay? It has a larger sensor which requires less enlargement. There is a view. You are literally closer with a longer focal length lens, okay, with the same field of view. So same field of view, but you're closer. This is what we mean by negative crop factor. That's why you take any of these GFX lenses to get the equivalent, you multiply it times 0.78. Not like crop factor on a DX sensor camera where you multiply it positively times 1.5. No, you're multiplying in the negative here, times 0.78. You see how that works? That is a serious aspect of the medium format look. It's one of 4 aspects of the medium format look. But that je ne sais quoi, that ineffable quality, is not part of computational photography. People say, well, you know, it's only 3 more megapixels. Well, when I compare the images at 300% or 400, they pretty much look the same. That doesn't strike to the heart of the matter. Yeah. Yeah, right. That's kind of like comparing 2 twins. Like, you got 2 beautiful women, they're both identical twins. It's like, well, they're both the same in each and every regard. So there's not really any difference. You know, this chick's like 5 pounds heavier. You know, but they're both the same. It's like, no, this one's got a horrible personality, and this one is Swedish. You know, you can't weigh that stuff. You can't calculate that on a calculator. You know, one is sweet and kind and nice, for example. The other one's a total witch, and, you know, she's an abusive, you know, I trust me, I know what I'm talking about on that subject. This is an abusive person that's mean and rude and abusive and horrible. They're both identical, but this one's a lot better. Is that a perfect analogy? That's as perfect a one as I can come up with. Thank you so much for watching. If you like these videos, click the link below. Tell me how much you can't stand me, you know? I guess I get those emails too. I hate you. You suck. I watched your video. Okay.